Creator, may your spirit and guidance be in us as we work for the benefit of all our people, for peace and justice in our land, and for the constant recognition of the dignity and aspirations of those whom we serve. Merci.
Welcome. Minister statements. Minister statements. Madam Premier.
Madam Speaker, as COVID-19 approached at the beginning of this year, our government was preparing our institutions to respond to the threat of a generation. Before a case even reached our borders, we pulled together a team from across our public service to stand up for our emergency response. As the threat grew, so too did our response. We declared a public health emergency. We restricted travel, we required self-isolation planning, and we put restrictions on businesses and people as the first COVID-19 cases were confirmed in our territory. We stepped up contact centres like Protect N.W.T and 811 to process more than 21,000 self-isolation plans and get people the information they needed. Place border staff at airports and highways and enforcement officers across the regions, and we established safe spaces for isolation in communities with enhanced medical care. Madam Speaker, our initial measures paid off. We were able to keep this virus under control and bring stability to our territory. Achieving this stability means we are able to keep looking forward, even as many across the country look at tightening up. Now that we know more about COVID-19 and its effects on the Northwest Territories, we can build a stronger response that better serves communities, residents, and businesses. Madam Speaker, this is what the COVID Coordinating Secretariat will do. It'll bring together the pandemic services thousands of residents have counted on since March under one roof and bring in the leadership and investment required to allow us to better prepare for the second wave. We know the majority of residents, businesses, and communities want these services, and they want them to work well. The dedicated team at the COVID Coordinating Secretariat will be able to deliver more seamless services for residents and businesses. Madam Speaker, these services are necessary. COVID-19 is not going to go away anytime soon. We need the services to continue to operate so departments can better focus on the normal daily functions and the priorities of this Assembly. Rising to a challenge like this pandemic means making real investments. Every jurisdiction across the world has done it. Our territory is no different. We know that these investments in isolation requirements, border controls, and enforcement work, not just from our own experience, but from the experiences of fellow successful jurisdictions like Nunavut, Atlantic Canada, and Yukon, who are all investing in similar services to keep their jurisdictions safe. But, Madam Speaker, we must also balance the need for these services with fiscal responsibility, and bringing the delivery of our pandemic response under one structure will make controlling the costs easier. The work to find savings has already begun. We're currently reviewing the territory's approach to isolation costs and considering equitable and fair ways to reduce the financial burden that makes up over half of the cost of our pandemic services. Madam Speaker, Indigenous governments and communities continue to play an important role in our efforts to protect the health and safety of residents. We will continue to engage with Indigenous governments and community leadership, as well as business stakeholders, as we consider important changes to self-isolation requirements and other Secretariat functions. We know isolation in designated hubs has been tough on people. We've heard of the mental and social harms, and we're in a better position to resolve them. Now, more than ever, we need to be talking about our mental health and well-being. If you know someone who's having a hard time, a difficult time, reach out. If you're struggling, please reach out for help. You're not alone. Madam Speaker, with strong territorial pandemic response plans, we have built the resilience and capacity we need to respond to cases across our communities. With expanded rapid testing capacity, enhanced surveillance of wastewater, and improved contact tracing, we are able to consider new ways to mitigate risk for communities while allowing people to return home sooner. Madam Speaker, what this Secretariat will not do is take away from the Territory's investments in our health system. It will instead support these efforts and the work of the Chief Public Health Officer by taking on pandemic services which in the past have divided the attention of health officials as everyone worked to rise to the early challenges of COVID-19. Investments like those in new testing devices, wastewater surveillance, nurses and laboratory expertise, and strong pandemic planning will continue, and our government will continue to get our health system the resources to respond to mental health and medical needs for all our residents as we move forward. Madam Speaker, recently it was announced that we have several active cases. The first cases the N.W.T has seen since this spring. With the arrival of a second wave in Canada, we must do our part to prevent the spread of COVID-19 now more than ever. That includes treating individuals who test positive, either presumptive or confirmed, with respect, empathy, and kindness. Even with taking every precaution, people may still get COVID-19, and we need to be diligent in our own precautions and support our friends and families and neighbours. We must be ready, and we must stay ready. The guidance, advice, and orders of the of the public health leadership, the expertise of our front lines, the operational support of the COVID Coordinating Secretariat, and the work of each resident to abide by the Chief Public Health Officer recommendations will work together to keep residents as safe as possible. So far, the spread of COVID-19 has been managed, not because we're lucky, but because we took action. We elected to invest in the health and safety of our territory, and the establishment of the Secretariat allows us to still focus on containing COVID-19, as well as committing to economic and social recovery and to delivering on our mandate. So when considering our way forward in the pandemic, I ask all members to support our actions, because investing in health, safety, and stability is always the right choice. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Minister statements. Minister for the Northwest Territories Housing Corporation.
Madam Speaker, supporting vulnerable residents in need of housing or facing homelessness continues to be an essential part of the Government of the Northwest Territories' response to COVID-19. The Northwest Territories Housing Corporation is working diligently to meet the needs of our residents as we move through the COVID-19 pandemic. The need to physical distance remains with us and continues to significantly impact our interactions with each other, and has highlighted the need for all of us to work together, think innovatively, and simply be kind to others. Madam Speaker, as the pandemic unfolds, last spring the Housing Corporation enhanced its transitional rent supplementary program by streamlining the process and simplifying participant requirements. Prior to the pandemic, this program served approximately 40 participants. Now that number has expanded up to 150 households. This program has now been extended through November to continue to support our residents. We recognize the impacts of COVID-19 have been felt across our territory and country. Among the many unfortunate realities of the pandemic, it is that a sudden loss of income could lead some individuals to being at risk of experiencing homelessness. In light of this reality, we increased the budget for the Homelessness Assistance Fund from $125,000 to $300,000. This program supports people with financial assistance to find private rental market housing. We understand the economic uncertainty caused by COVID-19 can be extremely stressful. We are working to ensure that the application process can be done as quickly as possible. Madam Speaker, the N.W.T remains committed to ensuring that our residents are able to access appropriate housing and shelter to self-isolate effectively as needed. The N.W.T has committed $5 million to help our most vulnerable residents be able to effectively self-isolate. This includes $1.4 million to support the self-isolation needs of individuals at risk or currently experiencing homelessness. The funding also includes $3.6 million to bring online 108 units that were mostly in need of renovations in order to meet the core housing need. At present, these units are not required by the Emergency Management Organization. They are in the process of being reallocated by the Housing Corporation to rental programs, such as public housing, market rentals, affordable rental, or to support home ownership. At this time, 36 of these newly renovated units have been allocated and are serving as safe and affordable and appropriate homes for the Northwest Territories residents. As more units continue to be reallocated, we expect to see a decrease in the waiting list in many communities, which should help in preparing us for the second wave of COVID-19. Madam Speaker, we must continue to work with our community partners to access buildings to serve as self-isolation centres for our most vulnerable residents. As necessary, in Yellowknife, we have leased the Aspen Apartments complex from the Government of Canada in order to provide 32 units for vulnerable residents to self-isolate. Also in Yellowknife, we have supported Spruce Bra, the former Arnica Inn, which provides up to 40 supportive housing units, and have assisted the Salvation Army to utilize more of its space. In Hay River, along with the Hay River Committee for Persons with Disabilities, we opened a new emergency overnight shelter. And in Inuvik, we provided, we used Aurora College for self-isolation that is used for student housing over the summer months to provide temporary housing. As the Northwest Territories begins to recover from COVID-19, the Housing Corporation will be an important economic contributor to economic recovery. We will be working with communities all across the Northwest Territories to ensure the construction, renovation, and repairs work that needs to be done is done safe and in a considerate manner that provides the greatest benefit to local communities and their residents. Madam Speaker, many residents across the Northwest Territories that are homeless or at risk of being homeless require housing stability and person-centered support. We know that addressing housing stability is critical to the success and overall well-being of our residents, and is an issue that this government takes seriously. As we move into the anticipated second wave, we need to remember to look after one another, provide support, and continue to listen to the advice provided by the public health officers, to keep all of our residents safe throughout this pandemic. Merci, Madam Speaker.
Minister statements. Minister for Industry, Tourism and Investment.
Madam Speaker, one of our government's guiding principles is to ensure that the expenditure of public funds maximizes economic benefits to Northerners and supports Northern business. This is consistent with our long-standing commitment to support Northwest Territories businesses and grow a strong, diversified economy. We put that commitment into practice through the business incentive and N.W.T manufactured products policies, which help ensure government purchases are made from or through Northwest Territories' owned businesses wherever possible, and to leverage this investment back into our economy. Similarly, our negotiated contracts policy exists to increase the capacity of Northern and Indigenous-owned businesses, supporting them to be more competitive in the Northern business environment. We have committed in our mandate to work with Northwest Territories businesses to strengthen N.W.T procurement policies and practices. By the end of November, we will formally begin this important conversation. Madam Speaker, reaching consensus on the subject of preferential procurement is going to require that we work together, be open-minded, flexible, and adopt a whole-of-government and territory-wide mindset. Leaders from across levels of government and from businesses will be asked for their input on where and how to strike a balance between supporting Indigenous and Northwest Territories businesses and widely accepted principles of responsible public procurement, including transparency, fairness, and realizing competitive value for public dollars spent. There are many difficult and contentious questions to face. For example, under what circumstances should the N.W.T pay more for goods and services if they're provided by a Northern business? How much more, and how do we define a Northwest Territories business? Should the objective of our policies be to level the playing field between Northwest Territories businesses and those in other jurisdictions? Is it to attract jobs and investment to the Northwest Territories? Is it to help minimize the cost of living in our territory? Madam Speaker, likely the answer will be yes to more than one question, so the challenge will be finding a way to balance these sometimes competing objectives. And what should an Indigenous procurement policy look like? How do we achieve a measured level of participation and benefit to Northwest Territories Indigenous governments and businesses? Through interviews, written submissions, targeted engagement opportunities, and online surveys, we will give every opportunity for Northwest Territories leaders, Indigenous governments, business interests, and communities to share their perspectives and ideas on how to answer these many questions and help advance the collective interests of our territory. Madam Speaker, our mandate states that government procurement and contracting is a source of economic activity throughout the Northwest Territories, and residents and businesses should benefit as much as possible. At the end of the day, we want more Northwest Territories residents working and advancing their careers, more businesses thriving and growing in our territory. It is time to revisit the policies we have to support these goals and face these sometimes complex and competing questions. While the N.W.T mandate commits to the completion of this review in 2022, I have asked the Departments of Industry, Tourism, Investment and Finance to do their very best to have this review completed by the end of next summer. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Minister statements. Minister for Municipal and Community Affairs.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. In the spring of 1999, a small community in southern Ontario called Walkerton made national news because of the deaths and sicknesses that were linked to contamination in the municipality's drinking water supply. This incident served as a wake-up call for all municipalities and governments across Canada to take stock of the state of drinking water supplies in the communities across the nation. Here in the Northwest Territories, 3 levels of government, including Government of Canada, Government of the Northwest Territories, and community governments, are jointly responsible for ensuring that drinking water is safe for human consumption. Madam Speaker, I would like to update the members on the efforts to upgrading N.W.T water treatment plants to meet the requirements of the guidelines for the Canadian drinking water quality. The N.W.T formed an internal departmental committee called the N.W.T Drinking Water Committee. The committee focuses on water-related issues and provides a forum for communication, cooperation, consultation, and information exchange, as well as to provide a link to other governmental and non-governmental agencies with interest in drinking water. The committee set a goal early on to see each community with a modern water treatment plant that would meet the guidelines for Canadian drinking water quality. Madam Speaker, I'm pleased to be able to announce that as of October 5th, 2020, this goal has been achieved. When YELLOWKNIFE's new water plant was approved for use, all communities in the Northwest Territories that operated a water treatment plant are now capable of meeting the filtration requirements of the national guidelines. Since 2001, partnerships between the federal government, the N.W.T, community governments have resulted in 23 upgraded water treatment systems. 16 communities have constructed new modern water treatment plants, and an additional 7 have gone through midlife retrofits or upgrades to meet the standards. Community governments have successfully utilized federal infrastructure programs over the years, such as Build Canada Plan, Small Community Fund, Clean Water and Wastewater Fund, and gas tax agreements to supplement their community public infrastructure funding from the N.W.T to build these water treatment plants. Madam Speaker, success can only be seen in the community government investment in their staff. All 30 N.W.T water plants are now operated by local residents. 23 of the plants have certified local operators. MAC is actively working with the remaining 7 to upgrade the certification of their operations and provide more oversight and support while these operators are in training. Madam Speaker, I'm proud of these accomplishments we have made to date, and all N.W.T residents can be confident that their drinking water is safe. Our work is not done. MACA continues to work with community governments to assess their system, plan for upgrades, and continue to support operators with ongoing training. Our interdepartmental team will continue to support our communities. The N.W.T is committed to provide a coordinated approach that supports water systems, including intake, treatments, and distribution. We will continue to ensure safe drinking water for all N.W.T residents is a priority. Merci, Madam Speaker.
Minister statements. Minister statements. Member statements. Member for Trinidad-Willowday.
Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, today I want to talk about the adverse impact and influence which illicit drug trade is still having within our communities amid the ongoing global pandemic. Madam Speaker, another common theme I've noticed in my constituency is the increase of crime, violent crime, and hard drug use within our communities. During the early stages of the pandemic, the federal government distributed CERB funding. I believe this was a mistake, as many of our residents use these new funds to feed their addictions to new levels. All we've seen is many of our bootleggers, drug dealers, and even our liquor stores profit immensely from this influx of money. I know now that the federal government have tightened up their rules surrounding allocations of money for those out of work during the pandemic, but there still needs to be some clear rules on what these monies are meant for. Madam Speaker, while there have been some minor wins this year, in terms of successful drug busts executed across the country, the issue of illicit drugs plaguing our communities has remained unchanged. I know the bulk of our attention has been focused on COVID-19 this year. However, we must remain vigilant against other harmful threats to our people as well. Pandemic or not, people are still selling, getting addicted to, and dying from illegal drugs. Dying. We in this House need to get ahead of this. Madam Speaker, according to the Canadian Centre on Substance Abuse and Addiction, quote, people who use substances report a loss of social connection and supports, as well as an increase in isolation, fear, and anxiety as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. Compared to the general population, they are more vulnerable to the health impacts of COVID-19 and the hardships of physical distancing, unquote. Madam Speaker, they say it takes a village or community to raise a child. In my opinion, it's going to take a village or community to combat this huge problem of drugs in our communities. We cannot solely rely on our law enforcement community to tackle these by themselves. We need to work with the leadership at the local level to start fighting back at the distribution of drugs in our communities. We need to send a clear message to the drug traffickers out there that their actions will not go unpunished. And with that, Madam Speaker, I'll have questions for the Minister of Justice at the appropriate time.
Member statements. Member for Frame Lake.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Today I'm going to return to the issue I first raised in the winter session regarding the implementation of amendments to the Access to Information Protection of Privacy Act. As I pointed out then, a lot of good work and cooperation went into the new legislation, with excellent changes introduced as a result of the extensive consultation with N.W.T departments, public bodies, the Information and Privacy Commissioner, and the general public. Improvements included the reduction of mandatory exemptions. The power of the Information and Privacy Commissioner was also increased to allow the issuance of binding orders, and the legislation will apply to municipal governments as suggested over many years. 8 months after my last statement and questions, and 15 months after the passage of the amendments, we are still waiting for the legislation to be brought into force. These changes were supposed to also include fee reductions, training, identification of classes of records that do not require an ATIP application, and many more. At the passage of the bill in June 2019, as a result of my questions, the then Minister of Justice committed to reduce the initial fee for general information requests from $25 to $10, provide 10 hours of free processing for general requests. Photocopy charges were to be dropped to 10 cents per page, and the personal information requests, free pages were to be increased from 100 to 200. These basic and simple adjustments have not yet been made. It's not clear why the delays continue. We have to pin our hopes and fears on the new Minister of Justice to finally bring this legislation into force. I'll have questions for the Minister of Justice later today on when he will bring this long ordeal to an end and finally bring the new and better access to information protection of privacy into force. Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Member statements. Member for Great Slave.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'm going to sound like a bit of a broken record here. However, I feel that my concerns are falling on deaf ears as I review the infrastructure plan for the upcoming year. Earlier in this sitting, I spoke about the need for funds to rehabilitate the Inuvik to Tuktoyaktuk Highway. On November 15th, the ITH, as it is commonly referred to, will mark 3 years of being open to the public. The first year saw an unexpected boom to local tourism, seeing an unprecedented number of visitors camping and biking the scenic ribbon of connectivity that finally links southern Canada to our third ocean, the Arctic. In July, Madam Speaker, you will recall that you and I had the opportunity to drive the ITH up to Tuktoyaktuk, and I have to say that what I saw was shocking, considering the relatively young age of the highway. In some places, the highway sits flush with the surrounding environment, the gravel fill having migrated onto the neighbouring tundra, giving one the impression of a flattened pancake. In other places, drainage channels mark erosion in the embankments, particularly concerning in the areas surrounding bridges and culverts. The pull-outs or pull-offs, and there appears to be none of the scenic viewpoints I recall there once being an RFP issued for. Most concerning, though, to someone of my background, geological engineering, are the areas of ponded or standing water on the sides of the highway. Speak to any northern engineer or geologist, and we know that ponded water is the kiss of death for permafrost, a key component of the stability of the ITH. Madam Speaker, why did we go to all the expense of creating an entire highway constructed of fill in order to protect the permafrost if we were going to skimp on materials and allow its degradation only 3 years after the project was completed? When I spoke earlier in this session, the minister was glad I was advocating for infrastructure in her region, but this is not just a regional issue. It's one that affects all parts of the Northwest Territories. This is about our connections, our corridors, our means of mobilizing within our territory. Every year, as the climate changes, we will see less and less reliability on our frozen infrastructure, an increasing need to build and maintain permanent highways. This makes it even more imperative that we protect and maintain our existing assets better. As every year that we don't, the cost will only rise exponentially. And Madam Speaker, that is not something we can afford. I will have questions for the Minister of Infrastructure at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Member statements. Member for Cam Lake.
Madame la Présidente, novembre est le mois de la prévention à la violence familiale et cette année a eu des répercussions dramatiques sur la violence familiale. Writer Amanda Taub compared 2020's increase in domestic violence to an opportunistic infection flourishing in the conditions created by the pandemic. Women, girls, and LGBTQ2SIA+ people face a heightened risk of home-based violence with COVID isolation measures. In Canada, more than 70% of domestic violence murders happen after the victim has ended the relationship. Indigenous women are killed 6 times the rate of non-Indigenous women. Half of all women in Canada have experienced at least one incident of physical or sexual violence since the age of 16. 2/3 of Canadians know at least one woman who has experienced sexual abuse, and the N.W.T is second to Nunavut for the highest rate of family violence in the country. Various pandemic-related stressors have contributed to the increase in family violence, including job loss and reduced income, food insecurity, fears about contracting the virus, exacerbated mental illness, and disrupted family routines, services, and resources. Isolation has put those surviving the violence in prolonged contact with their abuser, and others are no longer around to see the signs of violence. Isolating also means that people aren't leaving the house as much, which creates indirect barriers to access services from shelters and other community supports. Before 2020, the Canadian Department of Justice estimated that Canadians spent $7.4 billion each year in the aftermath of spousal violence. COVID is widening the cracks and making it easier for women to fall through. Poverty in Canada is already gendered. The disproportionate gendered impacts of COVID could have long-term and far-reaching consequences. If we are to restore momentum in our efforts to bring about gender equality in Canada, social and economic recovery efforts must take a feminist approach, and more so in the North, an Indigenous feminist approach. Tous les 6 jours, une femme au Canada est tuée par son partenaire intime. Madame la Présidente, il y a 9 femmes dans cette Chambre aujourd'hui, et il reste 9 semaines en 2020. Nous représentons le nombre de Canadiennes que nous perdrons face à la violence intersociée en 2020. Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Member statements. Member for Yellowknife North.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's good to see you in the big chair today. I hope you can keep this unruly bunch in line. Madam Speaker, the first week of November is National Skilled Trades and Technology Week, and I would like to congratulate all of our new Journey persons and top mark earners. My colleagues and I have spoken at length about the need to increase the amount of tradespeople in the North. And I know it's a shared priority both for the Minister and all my colleagues in this House. However, the numbers are not just low in Northwest Territories. There's a trade shortage across Canada, Madam Speaker. As caucus, we got to tour the Aurora College Trade Shop in Fort Smith, and I believe our transformation to a polytechnic gives us a unique opportunity to build on many of the existing successes in our trades programs. And the reality is the trades don't attract as many people as they used to, and even people in the system, many apprentices are looking to other career options these days, Madam Speaker. But COVID has given us an opportunity. It has changed the way we deliver our education system, and it must change the way we deliver our trades training. We have a chance to reimagine what trades training looks like. Are there no journey persons in your community? Well, why don't we get a mobile trades program where we fly instructors out to provide 6 months training programs in each region? Or why don't we have develop a distance mentorship program and put much more of our trades programming online? Madam Speaker, if our young people don't see why the trades are valuable, we need to make sure that our high school curriculum focuses on northern problems. There are many climate-aware students, and as we work on our N.W.T. good building practices, possibly a northern building code, building retrofits, there's an entire world of northern specialization in the trades that we need to speak. And I believe, Madam Speaker, we need to look at developing northern specific trade curriculum. Right now we use the Alberta curriculum and we largely just copy and paste it. And as a result of this, some of the very unique building features of the North and some of the things we need to prioritize, such as adapting to climate change, are not front and center in our trades programs. And I believe in the transformation to a polytechnic, we can build northern curriculum which will inspire our students to take them, but will also attract other tradespeople who want to come here and become northern building specialists. Madam Speaker, we are still struggling to attract and retain women in the trades. We must prioritize hiring female instructors to provide a lasting impression on young apprentices. We must expand trades education to address the root social issues that are keeping women out. Mr. Speaker, we are struggling, or Madam Speaker, sorry, I keep getting that wrong. It's really ingrained. We are struggling to get many of our apprentices to school, but I believe with a new look and the tools of online learning, we can increase the people entering the trades and our number of journey persons graduating. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Member statements. Member for Hay River South.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, it appears that when we now talk about our economy and small business in today's environment, we must preface it with the term COVID-19. Madam Speaker, believe it or not all businesses are being treated equally in this harsh economic environment. Government tends to favor larger businesses over small, and maybe there's a good reason for that. But it's just as important to think of our small businesses, where in Canada, approximately 60% have experienced a revenue drop of 20% or more. Small businesses, statistically, have laid off a larger percentage of staff than larger businesses. Small businesses, on a greater average than large businesses, have sought credit from financial institutions just to cover basic operating costs. Madam Speaker, when operating in the North, generating revenue and cash flow for any business, big or small, is problematic at the best of times. It is our small businesses, not only in Yellowknife, but in all communities, that are feeling the economic realities of COVID-19. This impact, along with the bureaucratic opposition to applying government policies that are meant to support our small businesses, northern businesses, in the best of times, is only working to smother any chance they have at survival. Madam Speaker, I routinely have the opportunity to talk to business owners, not only in Hay River, but in Yellowknife and throughout the N.W.T. A common theme that arises from those discussions is the question of why this government is not doing more to listen to and address the immediate concerns of small businesses. Madam Speaker, the bottom line is that our small businesses need work, and they need it now. They need to generate revenue, and this government has plenty of work on the books to keep all our small businesses working in all our communities. We as politicians have to realize that, and we have to make the bureaucracy realize it as well. We need to take a can-do attitude. Madam Speaker, we talk about reviewing and revising our procurement and business incentive policies to better support our businesses. I would suggest that while we work towards that end, let us apply what we have in place to address current needs. Small businesses need this government to work and support them if they expect to survive, and we have the tools to make that happen. Those tools just need to be sprinkled with some magical political will. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Member statements. Member for N.W.T.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Last week I talked about longer-term impacts on this COVID-19 pandemic's doing to our small communities. Restrictions on social activities such as community feasts, sporting events and extracurricular activities can negatively impact the mental health of our citizens. I want to say again that the Minister and the Chief Health Officer are doing, the Department of Health and Social Services are doing good work keeping COVID-19 out of our communities. The restrictions are necessary, and they're doing the best to communicate this to the public for fears to a minimum, but things could be much worse, Madam Speaker. As the pandemic wears on, the government must do all it can to ease negative impacts on our residents that I'm worried about, such as people as medical travel. Some of these folks are treatment for serious conditions, health conditions such as cancer, and that require repeat trips to the south. Self-isolating was once an inconvenience, but now I'm glad the government is making it possible to travel to self-isolate to the 4 major hub communities. However, repeated self-isolation through no fault of their own can especially be stressful. In this situation, many of the people on medical travel are facing. They're already dealing with the impact of serious illness on themselves and their families, and now that they have to add this to their burden. On Tuesday, the Minister of Health and Social Services quoted the understanding that the only travelers and essential workers can get immediate testing available to people who are going to healthcare setting. Other people are not to receive these tests. I wonder if the Minister can consider immediate tests available to those requiring repeated medical travel so that they can be reunited with their families at the shortest amount of time. I also wonder if the Minister would consider prioritizing people with rapid testing becomes available to allow them to reduce a 2-week self-isolation period. I urge this government to make special arrangements for the small group of residents who are already dealing with stressful and serious illnesses. I will have questions for the Minister of Health at the appropriate time. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Member statements. Member for Tabacha.
Madam Speaker, over the last 2 months, there has been escalating tensions in the province of Nova Scotia between the Mi'kmaq First Nation and the non-Indigenous fishermen. The issue at hand is about the rights of Indigenous people. The Mi'kmaq are exercising their constitutionally affirmed right to fish for a moderate livelihood. However, the Mi'kmaq are being met with serious resistance, violence, and hate from non-Indigenous fishermen who are terrorizing the Mi'kmaq to intimidate and suppress their Indigenous rights. Therefore, Madam Speaker, I stand today in this House to declare my solidarity with the Mi'kmaq Nation in asserting their Indigenous rights. I also strongly confirm and denounce the ongoing violence perpetrated against the Mi'kmaq. The level of violence and intimidation being done toward the Mi'kmaq is extremely concerning given widespread reports of non-Indigenous fishermen engaging in several criminal activities, including intentionally ramming and shooting flares at the Mi'kmaq boats, the destruction of property, the cutting of traps, and various illegal protests hindering Mi'kmaq fishermen activities. Madam Speaker, as a former chief, I know from experience what it's like to fight and defend Indigenous rights. I did so on a regular basis at Salt River because it's a constant struggle to have Indigenous rights recognized and affirmed by the courts and by governments alike. Madam Speaker, regardless of where disputes like these take place, I will always stand with the Indigenous people who are fighting for and asserting their rights. To me, it doesn't matter where any First Nation is located because we are all fighting the same struggle. Thus, I believe it is extremely important that fellow First Nations leaders and organizations vocalize their support and stand in solidarity with any rights-based conflicts. wherever they may be. In closing, Madam Speaker, I urge both the federal government and the provincial government of Nova Scotia to take immediate action in safeguarding the inherent rights of First Nations in this conflict. I also encourage our northern organizations and leaders to vocalize their support and solidarity in the rights-based conflict. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Member statements. Member for Deschaux.
Merci, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, back in December 2019, I had inquired with the Minister of Municipal and Community Affairs regarding extending the cell phone range, as there are current limitations that restrict our duty to provide for the safety and well-being of our travelers using the highways or waterways. Madam Speaker, there are many residents that traverse well beyond municipal boundaries. There are hunters and trappers out on the land year-round. There are fishermen plying the lakes and rivers, eking out a living, setting and checking nets. There are a vast number of travelers out on our highway systems up and down the whole Northwest Territories. When 911 rolled out back in November 2019, many residents were optimistically looking forward to the possibility of an extended cell phone range well beyond the community boundaries. 911 is only available within the community boundaries or slightly beyond. The Minister of Municipal and Community Affairs indicated at the time that N.W.T has highlighted increased cellular service along the major roads and highways as a priority to the CRTC, the Canadian Radio and Television Commission. The Finance Minister stated this past Friday, after inquiries from the MLA from Mumphy, the department wanted to move this forward quickly to ensure the protection and safety across all roadways. Madam Speaker, I will have questions for the Minister of Municipal and Community Affairs at the appropriate time. Merci.
Member statements. Member for Nahende.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, amidst the COVID-19 pandemic, Rosemary Gill retired June 8, 2020, after spending her life working in education, management, and career development, mostly in northern Alberta, British Columbia, Yukon, and finally the Northwest Territories. Rosemary taught elementary, secondary, and post-secondary education and has worked in management and career development for provincial, territorial, as well as First Nation governments. Rosemary was born in Wrigley to Elizabeth and Albert Horsey. Her father moved the family to Fort Simpson to work with John Goodall when she was a year old and has spent her formative years in the Deschaux. She attended Thomas Simpson High School, Sir John Franklin High School, Aurora College, University of Alberta, as well as completing an after-degree program, Aboriginal Governance, at the University of Victoria. Rosemary and her family, Lyle, decided to give back to their community, thus moved home in 2000 to work for Litico First Nations as the Executive Director and General Manager for NOAA Enterprises. After 2 years later, Lyle was diagnosed with cancer and passed away in 2014. Rosemary then left abruptly, eventually ended up in the Yukon working for the Kwandon Council as their Executive Director. She decided to retire in 2009, spent a wonderful summer with her grandchildren, but without a retirement plan was at loose ends and was soon enticed to help out a friend who was elected chief for his First Nation in northern BC. Rosemary returned home in 2011 and went to work for the Education, Culture, and Employment as a career development officer before moving to Aurora College as the program head for the Deschaux region in 2011. It was in this capacity she was seconded with full support of the N.W.T to Deschaux First Nation as a senior advisor to the Grand Chief in 2019, a position she held until her retirement. Rosemary stated, "My career success is in a lifetime of interesting employment opportunities can be tied directly to the education I've taken advantage of." She firmly believes that education is the one factor that will mean success in life for our youth. We can no longer be complacent about the disparity between the graduation rates and the N.W.T compared to the rest of Canada. Creative solutions and best practices are needed to make a difference. We must place a higher value on education as parents and members of our community, working as a team to ensure a positive experience for our students. Our education system needs to expand capacity to accommodate not only preparation. Madam Speaker, may I wish you seek unanimous consent to conclude my statement.
The member seeking unanimous consent to conclude his statement. Are there any nays? Member, you may conclude your statement.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks, colleagues. Capacity to accommodate not only preparing our youth for academic post-secondary education, but to make investments to meet the demands of the trade and technological field. A solid grounding in literacy, numeracy, and technology will serve one well, no matter the path one takes in life. Rosemary plans to stay close to home during the pandemic, gardening, reading, and working on her house. But once it's safe to travel, she will see some of the places she only reads and was curious about. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Member statements. Member for Yellowknife Centre.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise today to pay tribute to my friend, mentor, and collaborator, Lyda Fuller. Ms. Fuller is retiring at the end of this month after a 35-year career with the YWCA, 23 of those years in Yellowknife. Ms. Fuller is originally from Baltimore, Maryland. After she finished her master's degree at Johns Hopkins University, she worked with vulnerable populations there. On a camping trip to Ontario with a friend, she met her future husband, Ron, and eventually married him and moved to the YWCA in St. Thomas to work as Director of Community Development. While there, she spearheaded program and community development initiatives that led to improved services for women in various Elgin County communities. Madam Speaker, in 1991, Ms. Fuller and her husband moved to Regina, where she became the Executive Director of the YWCA there. She provided leadership to the agency through a difficult period after large losses threatened its viability. During her 6 years there, she added significantly to the agency's assets and extended its community involvement. Ms. Fuller and her husband arrived in Yellowknife in 1997 at a time of significant change for the YWCA. The agency was moving out of Northern United Place into Rock Hill, with both a change of focus and expanded service options, including the Alice McAteer House Family Violence Shelter, an after-school program, which is the largest licensed childcare offering in the N.W.T, and a transitional housing program for families. Madam Speaker, these have been eventful years for Ms. Fuller and the YWCA, from the high of opening Lynn's Place, which offers second-stage housing to women who have experienced violence, to the low of seeing the Rock Hill apartments burned down 2 years ago. The agency has not only survived but thrived under Ms. Fuller's leadership, for which she was awarded an Order of the N.W.T last year. Hawa Dumbai is now taking over as Executive Director, and I wish her every success. Most of all, Ms. Fuller has been a champion for women who have experienced intimate partner violence. She has expanded and improved the range of supports for women throughout the territory and has collaborated on important research on this issue. Madam Speaker, I wish Ms. Fuller a long and happy retirement with her keen interest in the night sky and fossils. I'd like to thank her for her service to the North. Thank you.
Member statements. Member statements. Returns to oral questions. Returns to oral questions. Recognitions of visitors in the gallery. Member for Trinidad-Willowday.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to recognize my CA, Tommy Lafferty. He's here with us, passing through from Lutzelke. He's originally from Beshico, and I want to say thank you. And yeah, let's see.
Recognition of visitors in the gallery. Recognition of visitors in the gallery. Acknowledgements. Acknowledgements. Oral questions. Member for Nunukput.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today, Madam Speaker, I was speaking about the mental health in regards to the self-isolation plans for the traveling, I guess for the medical travel. Does the minister acknowledge that the added burden that self-isolation requirements place on people who have repeated medical travel needs? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Minister of Health and Social Services.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you for the question, member from N.W.T. I recognize that this is a terrible time to be facing a serious illness where it's necessary to travel outside of your community and outside of the territory on a regular basis for treatment. And I certainly do empathize with the people who are doing that and recognize that, in fact, this travel is a burden. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Member for N.W.T.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Does the minister has considered making special arrangements with those who frequently travel on medical travel for such as cancer and that small group of people, and making it more easier for them to, when they're done their medical travel, they'll come back into the territory, do their test, and it's probably, once the testing is available, for probably 3 days before they're allowed to go back home. Is that possible to happen with that group of people? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Minister of Health and Social Services.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, it's my understanding that the Chief Public Health Officer looks at these cases on a case-by-case basis. There is no blanket exemption policy in place for people who have regular medical travel. But having said that, I recognize that this is a hardship, and I encourage the medical travelers to be in touch with Protect N.W.T to see whether they can obtain an exemption for more than one trip, so they have some certainty going forward about where they're going to stay. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Member for N.W.T.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think we could make that change this year at the Assembly ourselves with this minister, with a go forward and trying to make it help easier for our people that we represent, especially in the small communities. The burdens that having to fly all the way to Edmonton, you're looking at a week there, then another coming back 2 weeks, so you're almost gone for a month for a one-day checkup. Can we, as a department with the public health officer, she's the boss, my minister is, of that department. That being said, can she make that change for a positive change, and once it's available? Thank you. Just say yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Member for N.W.T. Minister of Health and Social Services.
Yeah, thanks very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'm a bossy person, but I am not the boss of the CPHO. And so I can't tell her what to do. I can make a suggestion, and she can weigh it and decide whether she wants to go along with it. She is a very compassionate person, and I'm sure that she has looked at requests like this before. So if the member has specific constituents in mind who need this service, I would encourage them to contact Protect N.W.T and seek that exemption. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Final supplementary, Member for N.W.T.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. What time does the minister anticipate rapid testing be available to the territory on a go-forward basis? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Minister of Health and Social Services.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, there is a testing unit called PanBio that will be in place in every health centre by the end of October. It will provide rapid testing in the sense that it can be used at the point of care and generate a result right then and there. So it is a very simple to use machine. It's not only available to highly trained medical professionals. So the thing is that if somebody is not symptomatic, these machines are not necessarily the things that they need most. So there is a sort of a sequence of events. There can be a screening test, do you have COVID now? But there need to be follow-up tests through the isolation period, which in any case is going to be 14 days. There's no change to that. So the short answer is rapid testing is coming your way well, it says in my notes the end of October, so it should be there now, and I'll check to make sure that's the case. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Oral questions. Member for Hay River South.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, it is important that the Premier accept some responsibility, good or bad, with how we are managing our small business support during these tough economic times. Therefore, I'll direct my questions to the Premier and she can answer them, or she can direct them to the Minister who she thinks can best provide the answer. Madam Speaker, we have a long list of projects that need to be undertaken. So the first question I will ask the Premier is, how is this government ensuring that all our small businesses are receiving work that will help them stay afloat during these tough and uncertain economic times? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Member. Honourable Premier.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That would be best deferred to the Minister of Industry, Tourism and Investment. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Minister of Industry, Tourism and Investment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, and I think the member's statement earlier on actually identified that this indeed in large part does involve the procurement resources and procurement of projects through the Government of the Northwest Territories. As I mentioned in my own minister's statement today, we acknowledge that there certainly has been a lot of discussion around ensuring that the procurement processes we have are indeed providing best benefits to the people of the Northwest Territories and the businesses of the Northwest Territories. So again, and I know the member acknowledged it, there is the review that's intended to happen, but we're also looking at some interim measures that we can employ that might more quickly make some changes which may or may not ultimately find their way into what gets recommended, but that might provide some more immediate relief or at least demonstrate more immediate action that, again, might make a difference for some of the businesses. In addition to that, Madam Speaker, there certainly is an ongoing infrastructure plan that's already been approved under the current fiscal, and that is, of course, advancing. Notwithstanding COVID, there's been a lot of work that's happened on that. And then, of course, Madam Speaker, there's quite a number of programs, a variety of programs that have been instituted to help northern businesses in terms of the Rural Relief Fund, the program money that has come through, as well as a variety of other COVID-related relief tools. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Member for Hay River South.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the Minister for that answer. Madam Speaker, I have talked to small business owners who are not receiving any work in their community or region. This is partly due to the number of bidders and outside influence from southern contractors. One area that we can assist them is in those M&Is or projects required by the N.W.T Housing Corporation and infrastructure. If we find a business that is being left out, will the Premier commit to talking with the Minister of Housing and the Minister of Infrastructure to find a solution to this inequity and make sure that our small businesses are working? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Member. Minister of ITI.
Goes back to me. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I think I'm going to speak perhaps from the Department of Finance hat on, as well as with ITI. Really, Madam Speaker, I suppose that's a whole of government response that's going to be required in light of the question. And certainly to the extent that Procurement Shared Services, which falls under now Finance, is responsible for managing and supporting those contracts, then indeed, as far as Procurement Shared Services goes, for all of its client departments, not only Housing Corporation, not only Department of Infrastructure, but all client departments, I'm sure they will do their very best to work with the client departments and ensure that that work is moving forward in a way that is conscious of the needs of our business community. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Member for Hay River South.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, considering that we have programs such as BIP, the BIP manufacturing policy, sole sourcing, and negotiated contracts, can the Premier commit to talking with and directing the appropriate minister to make sure we're exploiting those programs for the immediate benefit of our small businesses? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Member. Minister of ITI.
Yeah, Madam Speaker, in some ways it's a simple yes, in that that is the goal of the Department of Finance through Procurement Shared Services, to ensure that we are providing value not only to, obviously, to the people of the Northwest Territories in the expenditure of public funds, but value to the businesses community. So it really is an easy answer in that sense, but how we do it is where it becomes more complicated. So as I've indicated, we are fast-tracking efforts to have procurement review, but also looking at some immediate measures that we can bring into place, hopefully before the next sitting, again, on an interim basis, to see what we can do to have some immediate change. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Member for Hay River South.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. If we're saddled with COVID-19 restrictions for another year or more, can the Premier confirm what is the long-term strategy to assist our small northern businesses so they do not fail? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Member. Minister of ITI.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the longer-term strategy for small businesses, obviously, again, I'll refer again to the fact that we've fast-tracked the procurement review. And to that extent, I want to be very clear that it's my intention that that review engages those small businesses directly, engages the chambers, engages Indigenous governments, Indigenous development corporations, really looks broadly at what it is that we need to do to support the business community in all of its facets here in the Northwest Territory. Again, ensuring that we have interim measures in place before January, but also then, Madam Speaker, is engaging from COVID-related specifically is entities such as the Business Advisory Council to see what sorts of relief measures and recovery measures specific to COVID we can also bring into place. Madam Speaker, I believe later this week I'll be meeting again with the Tourism Association, so going on an industry-specific basis as well to ensure that not only broadly are we looking at what we can do for business community, but what can we do for individual industries. And on that note, Madam Speaker, also going back to my federal counterparts, whether it's through agriculture, whether it's for the Department of Fishery, whether it's for filming, all of those different tables, Madam Speaker, are all looking at what can all of the governments across Canada do to support those small businesses. Small businesses it's a huge issue here in the Northwest Territories. Madam Speaker, it's a huge issue for all of Canada. Small businesses support Canadian economy. So I'm not alone in the challenge that the member is bringing to me, and I ensure that we'll continue to do our best to fight that challenge going forward. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Oral questions. Member for Deschaux.
Merci, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, my question to the MACA Minister is related to the cell phone range extension beyond the communities. Has the Minister engaged the CRTC in any way on this important initiative? Merci.
Thank you, Member. Minister Maca.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. MACA has and will continue to support the ongoing discussions within relevant stakeholders. The Department of Finance, who are actively involved with CRTC proceedings, and the look to extend broadband across the Northwest Territories, the federal funding program that may be aimed at supporting development and within communities who can choose to build the necessary infrastructure. Just to clarify that the cell phone coverage and looking at cell phone outside of the municipal boundary along the highways, I will be speaking with with my colleague, the Minister of Finance. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Member for Deschaux.
Merci, Madam Speaker, and merci to the Minister for that answer. The Minister had indicated extending the cell phone range was a priority for the N.W.T. Can the Minister share the action plan to address this very important safety initiative? Merci.
Thank you, Member. Minister of Maca.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As a government, we did identify our priorities, and looking at the cell phone coverage, I know is a huge safety concern throughout the territory. We do have constructed highways, we do have winter roads that would need this would need this service. As of right now, I would have to follow up with my colleagues and looking at what we do provide and what is not that we provide, but what is provided along the highways is the satellite phones, the OnStar and the InReach. But I do understand that not all vehicles are equipped with these devices. I will have to get back to the member. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Minister. Member for Deschaux.
Merci, Madam Speaker, and merci to the Minister for that one. 911 service is a lifeline to many who are in life-threatening accidents within the communities, but more importantly, to accidents beyond community boundaries and beyond the current cell phone range within the vicinity of the community. Will the Minister commit to providing this Assembly and to the residents of the Northwest Territories an action plan showing all milestones to the development of cellular service extensions? Merci.
Thank you, Minister Maca.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I will have to consult with my colleagues as well. Looking at an action plan as well, I would like to provide the member with a current status of how we are working with the 911 throughout the Northwest Territories. I do understand we do have isolated communities that are not, I'm not too sure if they're able to access the program effectively because we do have broadband issues in the Northwest Territories, especially in the higher Arctic. I will follow up with the member. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Final supplementary, member for Deschaux.
Merci, Madam Speaker. I don't believe the CRTC provides funding for these types of initiatives, but rather rulings regarding current regulations. Will the Minister commit to looking at all possible cellular extension options besides monopolies and find funding sources? Merci.
Thank you, Minister Maca.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the municipal communities, we do provide capital funding to each of the communities depending on what it is that they would like to put forward in regards to infrastructure projects. At this time, I would have to explore what available federal funding would be available to the smaller communities should they want to extend in cellular service and construct towers within their municipal boundaries. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Sorry. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Minister. Oral questions. Member for Great Slave.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, my questions are for the Minister of Infrastructure. I was really pleased to hear that they are engaging a consultant to look at the ITH and what is needed there. However, I'm aware that there's repairs that could be done sooner ahead of that report. So will the Minister work to commit to convince her Cabinet colleagues to find money for rehabilitation work on the ITH ahead of awaiting on the consultant's report? Thank you.
Thank you, Minister of Infrastructure.
As the member is aware, there is no mechanism to avoid the need for analysis. The development of a business case is also, and cost estimates prior to seeking funding. We would not be applying due diligence that the residents in Northwest Territories expect by ignoring the required process to fund a capital project. Once I have required documentation, yes, I will engage with my Cabinet colleagues. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Member for Great Slave.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the Minister is speaking my language. I'm glad to hear things around due diligence and proper analysis. However, road building is rock science, not rocket science, and I don't know how much more analysis we need to know that we should put some more gravel down on the ITH. So if the Minister is not successful with their Cabinet colleagues, will the Minister find money from within the department to increase the budget for work on the ITH this year? Thank you.
Thank you, Minister of Infrastructure.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I have a limited ability to be able to move money within the department as there's a Financial Admin Act rules that must be followed. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Member for Great Slave.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, will the Minister commit to sitting down with me and going through the plans that she has for next year for the ITH so that I can be sure that everything that I think needs to be taken care of does? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Minister of Infrastructure.
Madam Speaker, absolutely.
Thank you, Minister. Final supplementary, Member for Great Slave. Oh, okay. Oral questions. Member for Frame Lake.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. My questions are for the Minister of Justice. We have one of the best access to information and protection of privacy laws in the world, but it's still not implemented. Can the Minister provide an update on the status of implementation of the new legislation, including reduction of fees, identification of classes of records that do not require an ATIP application, and other reductions in costs for applicants? Merci, Madam Speaker.
Sorry. Minister of Justice.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The ATIP Act, yes, we were hoping that the implementation would be speedier, but there's been significant staffing challenges. So we are hoping to bring the Act into force in spring of 2021. Recently, we did bring Section 61.1 into force to allow for the access and privacy staff to act as ATIP coordinators for other public bodies, so that's the staff within the Department of Justice. We're currently examining the fees, and we hope to have the regulations in place to have those reductions that the member was speaking of by December. And we have not yet had a chance to turn our minds to the classes of records that could be exempt. And you know, I sat with the member in Committee Room A for endless hours discussing the ATIP Act, and I think this is a valuable part of it. If we have classes of records that don't need to be go through ATIP, that frees up a lot of people's time. Saying that, I'll note that the number of requests have remained relatively steady, but it's the complexity of the requests that has increased. So that alone, this change alone, I don't think is going to alleviate all the problems, but I do see it as being a significant change and look forward to making it. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Member for Frame Lake.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. I want to thank the Minister for that early Christmas present. A major change that was introduced in the last, or the amendments, was extending the legislation to include records held by municipalities. In the spring of this year, the then Minister of Justice told me that a working group was formed with representatives of communities to ensure that they are going to be part of the process to develop those regulations. Can the Minister tell us what is going on now in terms of the application of ATIP to community governments, and when will this actually happen? Merci, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Minister of Justice.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So the working group was formed. There was Justice, MACA, N.W.T, and the N.W.T AC, and they met in April. But like many other things, the next meeting was delayed, and we hope to have that meeting prior to Christmas. And that's when the working group will be looking at what resources are required, what's a realistic timeline to make this happen, and then we can have a plan going forward. I don't want to put this onto the municipalities when they're not ready. I mean, it would be a disaster. It wouldn't be good for anyone. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Minister. Member for Frame Lake.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Yeah, as a former city councillor here, we don't want to get or implement this on top of municipalities without ensuring that they actually have adequate resources. So one of the other major elements of this review of ATIP was looking at ways to improve training and development of resource materials for all the different departments. Can the Minister provide a timeline for when this training is going to be completed and new support materials developed? Merci, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Minister of Justice.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So the department is working on the materials. I don't have a timeline for training, but the departments that need training are receiving training upon request. So just recently, departmental staff trained with the Department of Infrastructure on how to process these requests. So it's an ongoing process. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Minister. Member for Frame Lake, final supplementary.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Yeah, one of the hallmarks of developing this new legislation was the strong consultation and input with stakeholders and even members on this side of the House. It was I think, a good way of bringing forward legislation, and the ministry even spoke about that himself. Can the minister, though, tell me when we can expect to see draft regulations to finally realize the potential of this legislation, and will he commit to share those regulations with Standing Committee for their review and comment? Must see, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Minister of Justice.
Thank you. So as I stated, we expect spring 2021 for the Act to be brought in, and we will need the regulations by then. And as the member knows, the Department of Justice is creating a policy for the pre-publication of regulations, and these are the exact types of regulations that I imagine would be shared and open for input. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Minister. Member for Trinidad-Willowday.
Madam Speaker, just going back to my member statement on illicit drugs, I wanted to specifically, target those hard drugs such as, crack cocaine, and fentanyl. And I actually looked up some weight measurements for, what a pinch of salt is. So when you pick up a pinch of salt you're cooking, there's what, 60 milligrams there. That's how heavy that is. So put things in perspective, I looked up the lethal dose for fentanyl, and that's 2 to 3 milligrams. That's not very much. And these are the kind of drugs that are killing our people. There's an opioid crisis going all over Western Canada now, and we need to really start addressing this issue. Going back to my questions, my first question to the Minister of Justice, Madam Speaker, is can the Minister share with us if his department is aware of any increase in the amount of drug-related crimes in N.W.T since COVID-19 began, compared to pre-COVID times? Thank you.
Thank you. Minister of Justice.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The RCMP monitor the calls they get and what type of calls they get. And unfortunately, I don't have the data right now to compare the pandemic times to the pre-pandemic times. But when I have that data, I'm as interested as a member to see what it says. And anecdotally, we've all heard that there's been an increase in illicit drug use across Canada. And I think last time I checked, there was over $100 million in CERB payments that made its way into the territory. And so just that amount of money, you would assume there would be an uptick in all sorts of different sales, including illicit drugs. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Member for Trinidad-Willowday.
Madam Speaker, and in my notes here I have Madam Speaker underlined quite clearly, so I did make that mistake as well. So, but thank you for the Minister for that response. It's like I said, we've got to get ahead of this, and I agree with CERB payments. I think his department as well needs to look at ways to make sure that the money gets to where it's needed, because there's a lot of these payments that CERB are meant for food, rent, and make sure we get those out to those areas and not get out to the bootleggers and out to these other drug dealers, and that's what we want to see. My second question, Madam Speaker, is can the Minister tell us what sort of anti-drug initiatives are currently placed by the Department of Justice within N.W.T? Thank you.
Thank you. Minister of Justice.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And anti-drug initiatives are across government. It's not just the Department of Justice. Of course, there's things with the Department of Education, things that are taught in school. Health has, proactive anti-drug campaigns. In terms of the Department of Justice, we were part of the opioid task force along with the RCMP. We work closely to try and avoid, and we've been lucky so far, avoid the type of opioid crisis that we've seen in the South. We're also partners in the N.W.T's alcohol strategy. We've seen a lot of drug seizures over the last number of months. I mean, every time you turn on the news, it seems like there's a significant drug seizure. And I just want to point out that we see those, and yet they still keep coming. So it's an enormous market. And so if we don't stop people from buying, they're just going to keep coming. No matter how many seizures you have, it's a demand issue. The RCMP are also working to work more within the community. So training and having better collaboration with communities, so that they become part of the community, and you get that inside intel, and you're not just the RCMP officer, you're part of the community. And there's also, of course, the gun and gang strategy. that is being funded by the federal government, and that's an ongoing program that unfortunately is relevant now with organized crime in the territory. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Member for Tuna Day, Willowday.
Madam Speaker, and thank you again for that response. It's good to hear there's some initiatives in place, and there's so many of our people that with addictions are susceptible, and we still got to keep fighting for them. My other question is, can the minister explain whether or not there have been any changes regarding anti-drug procedures, protocols, or initiatives within N.W.T since COVID-19 pandemic has begun? Mr. Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Minister of Justice.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And changes, not really changes over the past 6 months. However, as I mentioned, the gun and gang strategy is under development, and I think that lessons learned during the pandemic will inform that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Minister. Oral questions. Member for Cam Lake.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, if we are to restore momentum in our efforts to bring about gender equality in Canada, social and economic recovery efforts must take a feminist must take a feminist approach, and more so in the North, an Indigenous feminist approach. How does the Premier, Madam Speaker, intend to ensure that economic and social recovery takes an Indigenous feminist approach in the Northwest Territories, and what will that look like in terms of changes on the ground? Thank you.
Thank you. Member for Cam Lake. Is it Madam Premier?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So when I hear that economic recovery has to take a feminist approach and it has to take an Indigenous feminist approach as well, basically that's saying to me that one size doesn't fit all. And there's lots of research, Madam Speaker, that says that one size doesn't fit all when we talk about many things in life. So what does that look like? I think that the Department of Finance was one of the first ones to come out of the gate and said that they were starting to do a gender-based analysis of all of their work, and I think that should go quite across all departments, Madam Speaker. Like I said, one size does not fit all, and we do need to look at, whenever we do our programs, on how that impacts the most marginalized of our societies. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Madam Premier. Member for Cam Lake.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, recognizing COVID's negative impacts on mental health and family dynamics, has this government put any special measures in place to assist women who are experiencing family violence during the middle of a pandemic? Thank you.
Thank you. Member for Cam Lake. Madam Premier.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to defer that to the Minister of Status of Women. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Minister responsible for Status of Women.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this is an item where there is a number of different things happening that are specific to women in the North and the response under COVID. There certainly has been funding that's been under specific pots of the relief funding that received from the federal government that are required to go towards supporting vulnerable populations. So that would be particularly people fleeing relationships of violence, which certainly majority of which do tend to be women. There's also been funding that has been directed towards supporting women who would be more vulnerable. So, for example, by the provision of cell phones for women who would be in relationships that put them at particular risk in a context where they would have less access to outside sources during the course of a pandemic and a lockdown. I'm just trying to say it's not a department for the status of women, but staff who are involved with the ministry or the department, again, status of women, Madam Speaker, Madam Chair, Madam Speaker, are continuing to engage because we are actively doing the work around preparing for the national inquiry and our action plan, and so that has also been continuing to happen throughout the course of the pandemic, and that gives a further opportunity to speak to women in the context of the pandemic as well. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Supplementary member for Cam Lake.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we have long heard of the efforts of the N.W.T to introduce third-party reporting of sexual assaults. What is the status of this work within the Northwest Territories, and what changes can we expect to see this fiscal year? Thank you.
Thank you, Member. Minister responsible for Status of Women. It's got to go to her. You're going to take it? Okay, Madam.
Speaker, I'd like to defer that to the Minister of Justice. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Minister of Justice.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And sexual assault is underreported in the territory, and I'm sure really around the world. Many survivors don't feel that the justice system will help them, or that there could be other reasons that they don't want to come forward to the police. And as such, there are some jurisdictions that have a third-party reporting system whereby the victim can go to that third party, and they will let the police know anonymously what happened, and that person can then access support services until such a time as they're ready to to report this. And so the N.W.T has been looking into this. There were some meetings in 2019 and as recently as this August, and we are finalizing what that third-party reporting could look like, and we've been in talks with an organization, and I don't have a timeline on when we're going to see something roll out, but we are quite far along. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Final supplementary, member for Cam Lake.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, during the 18th Assembly, the then Minister of Justice informed this House that the Aurora Research Institute was contacted to identify best practices to prevent and reduce family violence. Domestic violence deaths almost never occur without warning. In most cases, there have been repeated incidents of violence and indicators of risk, as well as opportunities for agencies and individuals to intervene before an incident that ultimately results in death. What can the people of the Northwest Territories expect to see as a result of the work done by the Aurora Institute? Thank you.
Thank you. Minister of Justice.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So the N.W.T Interdepartmental Working Group on Family Violence commissioned the Aurora Research Institute to provide an evidence-based for the N.W.T to use as a guide to shape the actions and the investment of the N.W.T in responding to the crisis of family violence. The results of this report show that we need an integrated, community-based approach to appropriately support families and prevent violence. They identified 5 main themes: education interventions, cultural integration, the justice response, the clinical response, and system transformation. This will require a change to our system. And we've started this change by creating a territorial director of family violence to coordinate this work. And I look forward to working with our partners in responding to this. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Minister of Justice. Oral questions. Member for Yellowknife North.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our 2030 energy strategy is one of the key documents in making sure that our government is a leader in climate change. Specifically, one of my favorite sections is Section 4 of that strategy, which commits us to reducing or increasing our share of renewable energy used for community heat by 40% to 40% by 2030, essentially getting more and more of our homes and communities off of diesel. Can I have an update on this section, Madam Chair, from the Minister of Infrastructure?
Thank you. Minister of Infrastructure.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Yes, we're on track with the actions. In fact, I would say that we're doing very well. Of the 13 short-term actions in the strategy, we have successfully implemented 11, which is about 85%, and we still have a year left in the current of our 3-year plan. Currently, the Northwest Territories, about 25% of heating is through renewable sources, such as firewood, wood pellets, and electric heat. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Member for Yellowknife North.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm glad to hear we're at 25%, and glad to hear that it's pretty good, and we're on track to getting to 40%. But I do note that the short-term goals the Minister refers to are to be completed by 2021. So that gives us 1 more year. And specifically, one of my favorite sections, which I've brought up, is to support the residual heat and biomass district heating sections. Can I get an update on how that short-term goal is working and whether it will be completed by 2021? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Minister of Infrastructure.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we have enhanced Arctic Energy Alliance programs to support biomass heating, notably the introduction of the Community Wood Stove program, almost doubled funding to Arctic Energy Alliance, Alternative Energy Technology program to support things like biomass heating. We also introduced $8 million in application-based grant programs until 2024 to support larger-scale private and commercial biomass adoption through the greenhouse gas grant program for buildings and industry. Related to this, we also introduced smaller and community-scale biomass heating through the greenhouse gas grant fund for governments, which has over $7 million available until 2024. We continue to support improving the biomass chain supply through the N.W.T adoption of wood pellet heating through buying biomass heat from Indigenous organizations. For example, the N.W.T Energy Limited that's located in Inuvik. As well, we continue to see great progress by installing biomass heating in government buildings under the N.W.T Capital Assets Retrofit Fund, which notably with the recent 2.5 megawatts of biomass heating installed at the new Stanton Hospital. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Member for Yellowknife North.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm glad to hear all of those initiatives. I believe the money we invest through the Arctic Energy Alliance is some of the best dollars we have out there in regards to our response to climate change. And I'm glad to hear we're on track for some of the short-term goals in this section. However, the long-term goals set out in this section are really how we're going to get and meet this target by 2030. Can I have an update of how those long-term goals are and a commitment that we are on track to meet this target? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Minister of Infrastructure.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the 2030 energy strategy will be reviewed periodically so we can assess what's worked and what doesn't. When we do the review, this will assess the progress, assess our progress, and reassess targets if we need to. The N.W.T will look to address longer-term goals as it renews its 2019-2022 Energy Action Plan in 2023-2024. And of course, we'll be engaging with public members and committee in developing the next new Energy Action Plan. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Final supplementary, member for Yellowknife North.
I have no further questions, Madam Chair.
Oral questions. Member for Frame Lake.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. I have some questions for the Minister of Justice. Back in June, we made some extraordinary efforts to pass something called the Temporary Variation of Temporary Time Periods COVID-19 Pandemic Measures Act. And what this piece of legislation does is it allows Cabinet by order to extend or adjust a date, deadline, or other time period prescribed in any act that our government has in place. But I'd like to confirm with the Minister of Justice whether we've actually ever used this legislation. Merci, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Minister of Justice.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Each department is responsible for following the laws of the territory, and I haven't been keeping track of which departments have used this. It's not something that centrally comes to me. I can check to see. I can say for my own departments, neither Justice nor ECE has used this, although I know that there are plans at ECE to use this. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Member for Frame Lake.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. I want to thank the Minister for that. But one of the section 2 brackets 2 says that an order will only come into force 7 days after Standing Committee on Accountability and Oversight actually gets a copy of that. I've never seen a copy of an order issued under this legislation, so I don't think it's ever been used. I'm just wondering if the Minister knows we went to great lengths to pass this legislation quickly. Why it hasn't been used? Can the Minister explain why this legislation is yet to be used? Merci, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Minister of Justice.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I can't speak for every department. I know that when this legislation was being contemplated, it was clear there were some deadlines that departments weren't going to meet, and I just referenced ECE as being one of them. And so we didn't want to be in violation of other statutes. So that's the reason this was put forward. Like I said, it expires, I believe, in December, so there's still some time, and I know we'll get at least some use out of it, but I can't speak for other departments as to why this was not used. Perhaps they found other workarounds. There was a lot of attention put to other things during the time when this bill was put forward, and this was sort of a backstop. And so I think it's a good thing that we haven't had to use it. We found other ways to comply with our legislation without reverting to this, and I think it shows that the departments were being proactive and staying on top of the things they actually needed to stay on top of, and the worst case scenario didn't happen in a lot of situations. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Member for Frame Lake.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. I want to thank the Minister for that. I guess why I'm raising this, Madam Speaker, is back on April 11th, just at the beginning of the pandemic, I contacted the then Minister of Justice by email suggesting that our government look at the possibility of an omnibus bill to make sure that we had the right kind of things in place to properly deal with the pandemic. And we've seen a few of these things, I think, roll out over the last few months now, but can the Minister of Justice tell us whether there's further changes, legislative changes that are being contemplated to better allow us to respond to the pandemic? Merci, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Member. Minister of Justice.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As the committee is aware, we are taking a lessons learned approach. So we're looking at what have we learned over this last little while, and moving forward, what do we need to do with the legislation? In some instances, it was clear. For example, with employment standards, there are some changes that were required in order to allow people to access federal benefits. And so those ones are quite easy, but I don't have a comprehensive list of what changes departments have identified to date, but that work is being undertaken right now, and at some point in the future, we will have that sort of lessons learned that we can make the members aware of. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Final supplementary, Member for Frame Lake.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. I want to thank the Minister for that response, but if this comprehensive review's been going on for months, can the Minister commit to share some of that information with this side of the House so we have a better understanding of what legislative changes the Cabinet is looking at making to better allow us to respond to the pandemic? Merci, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Member, Minister of Justice.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I wouldn't characterize what's been happening as a comprehensive review. That indicates that there are working groups and there's a lot going on. We are working through this pandemic, which is still ongoing. We haven't gone through an entire season yet. We haven't gone through an entire fiscal year. We haven't gone through an entire budgeting cycle. So there's still a lot to be learned. And as we learn things, we're making note of them. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Oral questions. Member for Cam Lake.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, last week myself and a colleague questioned the Minister of ITI in regards to seed funding. And as I was thinking about different constituents in my riding who have spoken about their experience with seed funding and the Minister's responses to questions about seed funding, I was looking to see where the discrepancies were from what I was understanding. And so where I think they are is that there's no market disruption clause within, or that's been suspended rather, within the COVID stream of seed funding. But in the entrepreneurial stream of seed funding, there still exists a market disruption clause. And so I'm wondering if the Minister of Industry, Tourism and Investment would be willing to suspend the entrepreneurial support of seed funding market disruption clause for the fiscal year of 2020-2021 so that businesses that currently exist within the Northwest Territories are able to also use that stream of funding in order to pivot or evolve their businesses in the wake of a pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you. Member, Minister of Industry, Tourism and Investment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, as I had noted last week, we are committed to doing an internal review of the seed policy, and included within that will be the market disruption clause. the larger communities versus the smaller communities in different regional centres have different views on whether or not market disruption is beneficial or necessary, with those opinions going very strongly one way or another. And in the middle of a pandemic is not an opportunity to wholesale change that, but that is why there is the COVID-related stream that doesn't have the market disruption clause in it, so that for those businesses that want to make use of this funds to make those pivots that are in a COVID-related sense, that they do have that opportunity to do so. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Supplementary member for Cam Lake.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I definitely have had this conversation with constituents of mine, and I understand where the polarization lies, and that's why I'm asking for the Minister to consider existing businesses right now in the wake of a pandemic. So it's not an opportunity for multiple other businesses right now in the middle of a pandemic to all of a sudden turn around and access this funding. It's targeted towards existing businesses who are already established within our communities, who are having basically cash flow issues in the middle of a pandemic, to turn around and pivot their businesses. My concern with waiting for a review is that these businesses will already potentially be going out of business by the time the government is able to do their review and come out with recommendations. So I'm wondering what timeline the Minister is working towards on these changes. Thank you.
Thank you. Minister of ITI.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I am certainly not one to shy away from the fact that we need to react quickly to what's happening with COVID-19 and react quickly to what's happening in the business community. But at the same time, I'm also determined that we have to maintain our due diligence before making a policy change that is to a program that's been long-standing. So I'm not going to take a position here on the floor today that will significantly alter that program going forward. The member has certainly given me an interesting way of approaching business relief. There are a lot of programs out right now, perhaps even some that may solve the problems on an individual basis for those different for different businesses. So at the moment, Madam Speaker, the best that I can suggest is that the individual businesses, if they aren't already contacting ITI to ensure that they're accessing every available source of funding, that they certainly continue to do that through the MLA, that, as she's mentioned several examples. And in turn, what I will do is go back and look and see whether or not, relying on due diligence, we can find another opportunity within the seed policy to ensure that we're doing everything we can to support businesses. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Minister, supplementary member for Cam Lake.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the SEED program also has a micro-business funding stream that's open to and is an exciting opportunity for artisans and crafters. And what this program does is it provides people with up to $5,000 in order to go out and purchase supplies that they might need in order to complete some projects. And especially with Christmas coming up, this might be of interest to our local artisans. But some people don't have the equity available to fulfill the equity requirement of 30% that's involved for people within the Yellowknife region, for example. Is ITI willing to set up a payment plan for artisans and crafters that may not be able to float the 30% equity required, so that they are able to increase their production coming up to Christmas time or afterwards, and be able to work together with the N.W.T to access that funding? Thank you.
Thank you. Minister of ITI.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And again, Madam Speaker, I'm very confident the department is listening carefully to the ideas that come through on the floor. But as far as coming up with new streams of funding, I can also say quite confidently that the Minister of Finance doesn't want me to make commitments around funding short of using my due diligence to do that. So I'll go back, we'll put some due diligence to it, see if there's some other options here. There certainly are funding options right now through COVID that have, and I realize it's not a perfect system, nothing is, where everyone is doing the best they can with what they have in the context of a COVID relief. But the business development, the BDIC certainly does have changed their loan programs to try to increase access to equity, make it easier to access that equity, which may well be the best and most expeditious way for businesses to access equity. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Final supplementary member for Cam Lake.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, it's a very exciting time because when we're faced with stuff like a pandemic, people start to get very creative out there. And so while it's nice for us to be the leader of the pack, sometimes we're not, and we get to look to what other provinces and territories are doing in order to respond to the pandemic. So right now within the government of Saskatchewan, they've given $1 million to their Chamber of Commerce to support a Shop Local campaign. And then if we look all the way over to the Atlantic provinces, PEI has done another Shop Local campaign where they've taken gift cards and they've sold them for $40 to PEI residents, but they're actually worth $50. And that effort is supported by the government of PEI. So I am wondering if the government of the Northwest Territories is looking at doing a similar initiative for a Shop Local campaign. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Minister of ITI.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, there is actually a Buy North campaign already that the Department of ITI has been sponsoring. It's free for all businesses to participate in the program. It's being advertised around the Northwest Territories, though given the question, it seems that perhaps that's the knowledge about the program needs to be looked at again. As for what there might be done to increase or enhance the participation of the program from businesses and what we can do, I'll certainly go and see if there are some best practices from my colleagues in other parts of the country that we can employ here in advance of the Christmas season. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Oral questions. Member for Yellowknife North.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I was glad to see the release of the Aurora College transformation to a polytechnic had a strong focus on trades and technology, and that document said many of the right things, but didn't go as far as seeing some of the specifics I would like to see. Specifically, I would like to see us build an N.W.T. trades curriculum built and designed for the North. So my question is for the Minister responsible for Aurora College. Can we develop a Northern-oriented trades curriculum? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Member Minister of Education, Culture and Employment.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. So trades curriculum is based on nationally approved trade standards, so there's not a lot of wiggle room in there to develop our own if we want our journey persons to be certified across Canada. We do have one trades program that is not national, it is unique to the territory, and that is the Housing Maintainer Program. And that's one that is currently under review and being updated in a way the member is referencing. I also want to point out that, with the transformation to a polytechnic university, there is opportunities for research and trades-related research, things into building methods for the North, the type of innovative things that the member is talking about that would attract people from the rest of Canada and hopefully around the world to the Polytechnic. So that type of work, it is possible. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Member for Yellowknife North.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, and I look forward to that work. I find it's truly exciting. One of the other issues that we have seen is it's been very difficult for apprentices to find journey persons and journey persons to find apprentices, and such that, if you're in a community and you want to be an apprentice, you often have to leave, and 4 years away from home can be a long time. Or if you're a journey person in that community, it can be hard to find an apprentice. However, I think some of the steps we've taken with putting Aurora College online really can be used in the future to pair journey persons and trades and apprentices up together, even if they don't happen to be in the same location all the time. Is the minister willing to re-examine some of our apprenticeship processes to increase that accessibility? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Minister of EC&E.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Absolutely, I'm willing to re-examine that. I've heard from a lot of journeymen and a lot of business owners over the years, and it is difficult to find journey persons and apprentices, and when you have an apprentice, it's hard to find someone to apprentice them. So, we do have the Apprenticeship Trades and Occupational Certification Strategy, and part of that strategy is focused on improving access. And so I'm not sure about some sort of distance model that may be done virtually. I don't know if that would fly, because we do have to have a certain level of supervision, but there are other innovative ways of doing doing this, and it could include a journey person who maybe isn't tied to a specific business, maybe a roaming sort of journey person. Like, that's just one idea. And so I'm looking forward to being able to implement some of those changes during the life of this assembly, because we do need to be react to the situation here in the Northwest Territories. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Supplementary, member for Yellowknife North.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, the idea of roaming journey persons is really an idea that excites me, and I recognize that some of the theory can move online, but at the end of the day, there needs to be a practical, hands-on, in-person portion to getting any apprenticeship. Another area I'd like to see the minister focus on is we employ a number of tradespeople in the N.W.T. I know they often try to get apprentice people, but I really think some more effort can be done in this area. Is the Minister of ECA willing to work with his colleagues in Infrastructure, Housing Corp, other departments that have journey persons and mandate that they have to take on apprentices and work with them to make sure we are fulfilling that goal? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Minister of ECA.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I am willing to work with them. There's already a lot of work going on between the Housing Corporation and ECE to try and figure out how can we leverage the journey persons that work at the Housing Corporation, at the LHOs across the territory. So that type of work is ongoing. I'm not sure about mandating. I think that we could probably get there by cooperating. You know, we can use a carrot instead of a stick in this situation. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Final supplementary, member for Yellowknife North.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. One of the other ways that we presently attract apprentices and encourage our journey persons to take on apprentices is there's a subsidy for the first couple years of any apprenticeship that allows, encourages a tradesperson to take on an apprentice. However, I've heard from a number of constituents that as that subsidy expires and it's not for their entire term, that they struggle to keep on those apprentices, and sometimes people don't finish their ticket. Is the minister willing to look into increasing the amount and length that we subsidize apprentices for? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Minister of ECA.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and absolutely I'll look into that. The last time that subsidy program was updated was 2018, and that was done in consultation with the ATOC board. And we heard what people around the territory wanted, and we tried to think about how can we take this pot of money that we have that only covers about a quarter of what we would need it to if we wanted to fund everyone. And so the decision was made to spread it out over the early years. But that being said, I'm aware that there's a desire to change that and possibly expand it. So, I'm more than happy to look into that and hopefully expand this program in the future. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Members, time for oral questions has concluded. Written questions. Written questions. Returns to written questions. Returns to written questions. Replies to Commissioner's address. Replies to Commissioner's address. Petitions. Petitions. Reports of committees on the review of bills. Reports of committees on the review of bills. Reports of standing and special committees. Reports of standing and special committees. Tabling of documents. Minister of Finance.
Madam Speaker, I wish to table the following document, Supplementary Estimates, Operations Expenditures Number 2, 2020-2021. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Tabling of documents. Tabling of documents. Notice of motions. Notice of motions. Motions. Member for Yellowknife North.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to move the motion for the establishment of a special committee on reconciliation and Indigenous Affairs. Whereas the members of the 19th Legislative Assembly agreed upon a priority to settle and implement treaty land and resources and self-government agreements, and whereas members of the 19th Legislative Assembly also agreed upon a priority to implement the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, and whereas members of the 19th Legislative Assembly believe that a special committee could seek and encourage discussions and recommendations on the opportunities and challenges in meeting these priorities, now therefore I move, seconded by the Honourable Member for Hay River North, that pursuant to Rule 92, Sub 1, the Legislative Assembly hereby establish a special committee on reconciliation and Indigenous Affairs, and further, that the following members be named to the special committee: Ms. Lisa Semler, the member for Inuvik Twin Lakes. Mr. Steve Noren, the member for Tunaday-Willaday. Mr. Ryland Johnson, the member for Yellowknife North. The Honourable R.J. Simpson, member for Hay River North. And the Honourable Caroline Wozniak, member for Yellowknife South. And furthermore, that the Minister of Executive and Indigenous Affairs is an ex officio, non-voting member of the committee. And furthermore, that the Special Committee on Reconciliation and Indigenous Affairs be established by the terms of reference identified as Table Document 211-19 Sub 2. And furthermore, that the Special Committee on Reconciliation and Indigenous Affairs table its final report no later than the first day of the final sitting of the 19th Legislative Assembly. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The motion is in order. To the motion, member for Yellowknife North.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm happy to move this motion before. Throughout assemblies, the special committees are established, and they really do show the priorities of that group. I believe this committee has lots of work to do in this area, and I believe a committee both comprised of regular members and cabinet can truly move this forward as it's a priority of this House. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
To the motion. Question has been called. All those in favor? All those opposed? Abstentions? The motion is carried. Motions. Motions. Notice of motion for first reading of bills. Notice of motion for first reading of bills. First reading of bills. Minister of Justice.
Madam Speaker, I move, seconded by the Honourable Member for Inuvik-Boot Lake, that Bill 17, an act to amend the Corrections Act, be read for the first time. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The motion is in order and is non-debatable. All those in favor? All those opposed? Abstentions? The motion is carried. Bill 17 has had first reading. First reading of bills. Minister of Justice.
Madam Speaker, I move, seconded by the Honourable Member for Inuvik-Boot Lake, that Bill 18, an act to amend the Legal Profession Act, be read for the first time. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The motion is in order and is non-debatable. All those in favor? All those opposed? Abstentions? The motion is carried. Bill 18 has had first reading. First reading of bills. Minister of Education, Culture and Employment.
Madam Speaker, I move, seconded by the Honourable Member for Inuvik-Boot Lake, that Bill 19, an act to amend the Student Financial Assistance Act, be read for the first time. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The motion is in order and is non-debatable. All those in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? The motion is carried. Bill 19 has had first reading. First reading of bills. First reading of bills. Second reading of bills. Minister of Finance.
Madam Speaker, I move, seconded by the Honourable Member from Hay River North, that Bill 16, an act to amend the Income Tax Act, be read for the second time. The bill reduces the small business tax rate from 4% to 2%, effective January 1st, 2020. It also makes retroactive amendments to harmonize the Northwest Territories tax regime with the federal system. Those amendments do two things: ensure that split income received by a senior is factored into the determination of their territorial age credit, and allow more pension credit for veterans. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The motion is in order. To the principle of the bill. Member for Frame Lake.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. I wish to speak to this bill. The main purpose, as I can see, is to reduce the small business tax rate from 4% to 2%. And I'm sure the Minister of Finance will explain at some point that this is to bring our small business tax rates in line with some of the other jurisdictions in Canada. I'm not opposed in principle to reducing taxes, but I think we need to look at the issue of tax fairness. And this will result in our government losing some revenue, and I'd like to know how much. And I think the public deserves to know that as well. I'm mindful of the Minister of Finance. She gave a fiscal strategy or fiscal update about a week and a half ago that really we're not in good shape, Madam Speaker, in terms of our finances, and this bill is not going to help that in any way. I would have much preferred an approach that would have been revenue neutral. So if we're going to reduce taxes, then we have to find a way to replace that lost revenue. You know, I'm on record supporting tax fairness rather than tax reductions. And I've suggested in the past many times that we need to look at ways to increase our revenues, and I think one of the ways that we need to look at increasing our revenues is by adding another tax bracket onto our personal income tax rates. We only have 4. We're one of the few jurisdictions left in Canada that only has 4 income tax brackets. Alberta went to 5 in 2016. British Columbia went to 5 in 2014. New Brunswick went to 6 in 2015. Newfoundland and Labrador went to 5 in 2015. Nova Scotia went to 5 in 2010. Ontario went to 5 in 2014. Yukon went to 5 in 2015. And even the federal government went to 5 in 2016. So I'm all about tax fairness, Madam Speaker, and I think we need to find a way to replace this revenue. And there's an opportunity to do so, to look at increasing our personal income tax brackets by adding one. And I think it's only fair that we all find ways to contribute, especially during a pandemic. And one way to do that is to add another high income tax bracket to replace the lost revenue from this reduction in small business tax. Mussy, Madam Chair, or Madam Speaker.
To the principle of the bill. Member for, Hay River North, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and it gives me great pleasure to second this bill. There was a time in this Assembly when the idea of reducing taxes on small business couldn't even be discussed. Not this current Assembly, but the previous one I was in. You know, we heard today that small businesses have been hit hard by the pandemic, disproportionately perhaps. This is a way that we can help support them. You know, revenues are important. Revenues to the N.W.T, of course, are important. However, you know, I've had small businesses say to me that, you know, if I could have a bit of a tax break, I would be able to hire that apprentice. You know, we need to think beyond just the N.W.T and what our needs are. We need to think about the people and the businesses of the territory, and I look forward to the debates on this going forward. And I'm happy to be part of this, and I think it's a great move for the territory. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Member. To the principle of the bill, Member for Yellowknife North.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just would like to rise in support of this bill, and I am sure my colleague, Mr. Simpson, is happy to see that this bill will pass first reading today, and we will ultimately, I believe, lower the small business tax rate. I really think the backbone of our N.W.T economy and recovery must be our small businesses. And as we enter into a world and compete in a world where capital increasingly gets held in the hands of large businesses, I think we as government have to do everything we can to support our small businesses. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
To the principle of the bill? Question has been called. All those in favor? All those opposed? Abstentions? The motion is carried. Bill 16 has had second reading and is referred to a standing committee of the Legislative Assembly for review. Second reading of bills. Second reading of bills. Consideration of committee of the whole of bills and other matters. Bill 15, committee reports 4-19-2, committee reports 5-19-2, Minister's Statement 77-19-2, Table Document 165-19-2, Table Document 166-19, brackets 2, Table Document 167-19, brackets 2, Table Document 181-19, brackets 2, and Table Document 217-19, brackets 2, with member from Hay River South in the chair.
I call the Committee of the Whole to order. What is the will of the committee? Mr. Norn?
Mr. Chair, committee wishes to consider the following documents. CR 4-19 bracket 2, CR 5-19 bracket 2, and then Bill 15. Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Does committee agree? Agree. Thank you, committee. We will take a short break. Committee, we have agreed to consider Committee Report 14-19 brackets 2, Report on the Review of the 2018-2019 Northwest Territories Human Rights Commission Annual Report. I will go to the Chair of the Standing Committee on Government Operations for any opening comments.
So I go ahead. It says, Madam Chair, maybe I should keep it that way. Because he was teasing me. Our report was read into the record, so I do not have any substantive comments to add, but I would like to thank the committee for their work on this report, and individual members may have comments on this report and its recommendations. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Member for Thabacha. I will now open the floor to general comments on Committee Report 14-19 bracket 2, report on the review of the 2018-2019 Northwest Territories Human Rights Commission Annual Report. Seeing no comments, Mrs. Marcellus.
Mr. Chair, I move that this committee recommends that the government of the Northwest Territories investigate and take the necessary steps to solve the issues and remove the barriers that prevent the alignment between building codes and standards and the Human Rights Act. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mrs. Marcellus. The motion is in order. Member for Yellowknife North.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Glad to see you in that seat today. I'd just like to speak in support of this motion. The N.W.T. Department of Infrastructure on our good building practices has done a lot of great work in including disability and accessibility standards. However, that work we're very much leaders on has not made it into the private sector. And presently there's a gap in this area. There's the National Building Code, and builders go out, they build something, and they think it's compliant with human rights law, and it's not. And that can cause a lot of frustration for people who are building buildings to find out they followed a code and it can actually end them up in human rights court. The N.W.T. has done this work in the Department of Infrastructure, but we have not really translated it into the private sector. Some of that work is beginning. The Department of Municipal and Community Affairs has the fire prevention sections of the building code, but not the rest of it. I really do believe we need a Northern Building Code and a Building Standards Act, and part of that work needs to be make sure that contractors know that following the National Building Code doesn't always mean your building is accessible. So there's work being done at the national level, there's work being done by N.W.T, but we have to put it all together and make sure that contractors know where those line up. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Glad to.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. To the motion. Question's been called. All those in favor? All those opposed? All those abstaining? Motion carried. Mrs. Marcellus?
Chair, I move this committee recommends that the government of the Northwest Territory enhance digital access and inclusion for people living with disabilities in the Northwest Territories by reviewing current practices in serving the public and identifying measures to improve the existing situation with the goal to reduce the number of complaints to the Human Rights Commission on the grounds of disabilities. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The motion is in order. To the motion. Question's being called. All those in favor? All those opposed? All those abstaining? Motion is carried. Mrs. Marcellus?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that this committee recommends that the government of the Northwest Territories provide a response to the recommendations contained in this report within 120 days. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mrs. Marcellus. The motion is in order. To the motion. Question's been called. All those in favor? All those opposed? All those abstaining? Motion carried. Thank you, committee. Do you agree that you have concluded consideration of committee report 4-19 brackets 2, report on the review of the 2018-2019 Northwest Territories Human Rights Commission annual report? Thank you, committee. We have concluded consideration of committee report 5-19 bracket 2, report on the review of the 2018-2019 Northwest Territories Human Rights Commission annual report. Committee, we have agreed to consider committee report 5-19 bracket 2, report on the review of the 2018-2019 annual report of the Information and Privacy Commissioner of the Northwest Territories. I will go to the chair of the Standing Committee on Government Operations for any opening comments. Member for Thabacha.
Chair, our report was read into the record, so I do not have any substantive comments to add, but I would like to thank the committee for their work on the report, and individual members may have comments on the report and its recommendations. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mrs. Marcellus. I will now open the floor to general comments on committee report 5-19 bracket 2, report on the review of the 2018-2019 annual report of the Information and Privacy Commissioner of the Northwest Territories. Seeing no comments, Mrs. Marcellus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that this committee recommends that the Government of the Northwest Territories provide an update on the work being done to bring into force the amended sections of the Access to Information and Protection of Privacy Act, including a schedule indicating when the changes will take effect. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mrs. Marcellus. The motion is in order to the motion. Questions being called. All those in favor? All those opposed? All those abstaining. Motion carried. Mrs. Marcellus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that this committee recommends that the Government of the Northwest Territories investigate and explore options for centralizing the management and administration of the Access to Information and Protection of Privacy Act on behalf of the Government of the Northwest Territories departments. And further, the Standing Committee recommends that government share the results of this review for committee input. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mrs. Marcellus. The motion is in order to the motion. Member for Yellowknife North.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to bring some context to these motions, as both our Information and Privacy Commissioner put a lot of work into these. I would like to thank her for many years of service, and our new Information and Privacy Commissioner has a big task, as well as the Department of Justice, in bringing this act online. I really do believe we have one of the best ATIP acts in the country. However, it is not presently in force, and there's a lot of work to do. What this motion speaks to specifically is typically ATIP coordinators have been located individually in all departments, and I myself have done some of that ATIP work, and it often gets put on the side of your desk, but it really is work that requires expertise and specialization. It's fundamental to a government to make sure we respond to information requests. It's fundamental that we make sure we are an open and transparent government, and therefore this recommendation is to centralize all of those positions into one shop within the government, properly fund them, and make sure they can implement our information and privacy legislation and truly have that expertise so we can be a leader in this area. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Happy to support this motion.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. To the motion. Member for Frame Lake.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks, Mr. Chair. I too support this motion. I had cause to use the access to information process in the last assembly as an MLA because ministers would not share documents sometimes, believe it or not. So there was some interesting material that was sometimes exempted or redacted, and differences in the way that different departments approached this. So I think having people consistently work together from different departments to offer better consistency and responses to applicants is a good idea, and I support this. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. O'Reilly. To the motion. Question's been called. All those in favour? All those opposed? All those abstaining? Motion carried. Mrs. Marcellus?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that this committee recommends that the Government of the Northwest Territories update committee on work to develop a standard approach to including access by design principles into the design of communications, programs, policies, and legislation. And further, the committee requests details on how the Government of the Northwest Territories will formalize and share the standard approach with the Government of the Northwest Territories staff. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mrs. Marcellus. Motion is in order. To the motion. Member for Yellowknife North.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So what we're recommending here is the wording access that is by design, but because that's the wording the N.W.T uses. This is really about open and transparent government. It's about proactive disclosure. I'd like to thank my colleague from Frame Lake. He asked a number of questions of the Minister of Justice today about proactive disclosure. This recommendation has long came from the Information and Privacy Commissioner, largely with a lens that this ultimately saves us time and resources, saves our media headache. It saves people in departments hassles. I don't know how often I send emails to ministers simply to find information, to find policies, to find things that should already be proactively disclosed. There is an abundance of emails and information requests flying around government for information that should be publicly available. The federal government has done a lot of great work on their document management system. Ours is known as DIMS. Many sections of that are simply open to the public already. I think there is no reason we can't put working documents, we can't put our policies, we can't put all of our templates out there. Additionally, this goes to really how we publish information. Quite often as this government, we release information and there's not the underlying data set. I all the time request Excel spreadsheets, and it's as if it's an impossible ask to get what actually went into a graphic. We have a long way to go to be an open and transparent government. This motion is really speaking to that, and once again, I encourage this cabinet to be a leader in this area. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. To the motion. Question's been called. All those in favour? All those opposed? All those abstaining? Motion carried. Mrs. Marcellus.
I move that this committee recommends that the Government of the Northwest Territories develop and implement a plan for ending the use of fax machines in the health and social services sector. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mrs. Marcellus. To the motion. Member for Yellowknife North.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm embarrassed that I have to sit here and support a motion to end fax machines in the use of the health and social services sector in 2020. I don't even know how to use a fax machine, Mr. Speaker, or Mr. Chair. I recognize there's some complications here. One is getting Alberta's records and our records to be able to share digitally. We need to do that. I recognize one of the other issues is that sometimes the internet is not all that reliable in our communities, so we rely on fax machines. And I guess that ties to a larger problem of making sure all of our communities have access to high-speed internet such that when we actually update our medical record system, that everyone can have access to it. But I have had constituents on medical travel print out giant folders and have to walk in with CDs or have to request fax to Alberta hospitals that get lost. The way right now we are sharing health records, both within the territory and out of territory, needs a serious look. And I think this use of fax machines continually is just a representation of a lack of making process on this issue and really making sure we have bought and paid for the proper software such that medical records can be safely shared both within the territory and out of territory. So I'm happy to see this motion, but perhaps in the life of this government, we can stop using fax machines to send health records. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. To the motion? Questions being called? All those in favour? All those opposed? All those abstaining? Motion carried. Mrs. Marcellus?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that this committee recommends that the Government of the Northwest Territories provide a response to the recommendations contained in this report within 120 days. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mrs. Marcellus. The motion is in order. To the motion. Questions being called? All those in favour? All those opposed? All those abstaining? Motion is carried. Thank you, committee. Do you agree that you have concluded consideration of Committee Report 5-19, Bracket 2, report on the review of the 2018-2019 Annual Report of the Information and Privacy Commissioner of the Northwest Territories? Thank you, committee. We have concluded consideration of Committee Report 5-19, Bracket 2, report on the review of the 2018-2019 Annual Report of the Information and Privacy Commissioner of the Northwest Territories. Committee, we have agreed to consider Bill 15, Miscellaneous Statute Law Amendment Act 2020. I will ask the Minister of Justice to introduce the bill. Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm here today to present Bill 15, Miscellaneous Statute Law Amendment Act 2020. The purpose of Bill 15 is to amend various statutes of the Northwest Territories for which minor changes are proposed or errors or inconsistencies have been identified. Each amendment included in the bill had to meet the following criteria. It must not be controversial. It must not involve the spending of public funds. It must not prejudicially affect rights. It must not create a new offense or subject a new class of persons to an existing offense. Departments responsible for the various statutes being amended have reviewed and approved the changes. The amendments proposed in Bill 15 are minor, uncontroversial, or non-substantive, and many consist of technical corrections to a statute. The amendments are of such a nature that the preparation and legislative consideration of individual bills to correct each statute would be time-consuming for the government and the Legislative Assembly. I would be pleased to answer any questions members may have regarding the bill, and I have a witness I would like to bring in. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Minister. Would you like to bring in witnesses into the chamber?
Yes, I would.
Sergeant at Arms, please escort the witnesses into the chamber. Minister, please introduce your witnesses.
Thank you. I'd like to introduce Mr. Mike Reddy, the Director of Legislation.
Thank you. I will now open the floor to general comments on Bill 15. Is the committee agreed that there are no further general comments? Can we proceed to a clause-by-clause review of the bill? Committee, we will defer the bill number and title until after consideration of the clauses. Please turn to page 1 of the bill. Clause 1. Does the committee agree? Clause 2. Does the committee agree? Clause 3. Does the committee agree? Clause 4. Does the committee agree? Clause 5, does the committee agree? Clause 6, does the committee agree? Clause 7, does the committee agree? Clause 8, does the committee agree? Clause 9, does the committee agree? Clause 10, does the committee agree? Clause 11, does the committee agree? Clause 12, does the committee agree? Clause 13, does the committee agree? Clause 14, does the committee agree? Committee, to the bill as a whole, does the committee agree that Bill 15, Miscellaneous Statute Law Amendment Act 2020 is now ready for third reading? Thank you, committee. Bill 15, Miscellaneous Statute Law Amendment Act 2020 is now ready for third reading. Does the committee agree that this concludes our consideration of Bill 15, Miscellaneous Statute Law Amendment Act 2020? Thank you, Minister. Our thanks to your witness. Sergeant-at-Arms, please escort the witness from the chamber. Mr. Noren, what is the will of the committee?
Mr. Chair, I move that the chair rise and report progress.
Thank you, Mr. Noren. There's a motion on the floor to report progress. The motion is in order and non-debatable. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion is carried. I will now rise and report progress.
What is the report of committee? Member for Hay River South.
Madam Speaker, your committee has been considering Committee Report 4-19 brackets 2, Committee Report 5-19-2 brackets 2, and Bill 15, and would like to report progress with 8 motions carried, and that Committee Report 4-19 bracket 2 and Committee Report 5-19 bracket 2 are concluded, and that Bill 15 is ready for third reading. And Madam Speaker, I move that the report of the Committee of the Whole be concurred with. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. I need seconder. Member for Nunavut. All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carried. Mr. Clerk, orders of the day.
Oh, sorry.
Go back. Third reading of bills. Third reading of bills. Mr. Clerk, orders of the day.
Orders of the day for Tuesday, November 3rd, 2020, 1:30 p.m. Prayer, minister statements, member statements, recognition of visitors in the gallery, reports of committees and the review of bills, reports of standing and special committees, returns to oral questions, acknowledgements, oral questions, returns to written questions, replies to commissioner's address, petitions, tabling of documents, notices of motion, motions, notices of motion for first reading of bills, Bill 20, second reading of bills, Bills 17, 18, and 19, consideration in committee of the whole of bills and other matters, minister statement 77-19-2, table documents 165, 166, 167, 181, and 217-19-2, report of committee of the whole, third reading of bills, Bill 15, orders of the day.
Thank you. This House will stand adjourned until November 3rd. 1:30 p.m.
Order.